Hello everybody, Dwight Moody here in the meeting house for our weekly program, Sunday in the House. A friend of the house called me this week to discuss a series of encounters that he had had with people who were interested in his work, helping the homeless, feeding the poor, even supporting the LGBTQ community. What they were not interested in was going to church, joining a worshiping community, or showing up on Sunday morning. But yet they had a need and an interest and a commitment to the kind of moral work that is summarized in the great statement of the prophet Micah, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. There are a lot of people that want to do this. Maybe this is you today. You like the idea of humility before God, the great mystery of the universe. You like the commitment to be merciful and kind and just and compassionate and empathetic with the people that you encounter day by day, those who are your friends and those who are your enemies or strangers. And you like the idea of doing justice around the world, everybody having a fair shake, having an opportunity for legal justice and for economic prosperity and physical health and well-being. Maybe that's you. You know, there are 40 million people in the United States that have given up on church, but still want to follow Christ, still want to live a life shaped by the Lord Jesus Christ. Maybe that's you. That's what this program is all about. Each Sunday morning, I'm trying to interpret the wider drama and trauma in our culture. What's going on around us? My, things continue to happen every single week, not only in our country, but around the world. Things that surprise us, things that disgust us, things that make us sad, things that make us want to give up. And we want to understand what is happening around us. But more than that, I want to help you interpret this trauma in the light of the words and deeds of Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus lived a long time ago, but he had to deal with so much similar to what we're dealing with today, especially the political context of his own work. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to have our red letter lesson, and I'm going to continue this series that I'm on Jesus and politics. We've been looking at the political dynamics, the political episodes, the political crises that surrounded Jesus and his ministry, that determined so much about his birth, his life, and his death. We have to understand these. They help us interpret our own times. But you know, in the midst of all of this, not only do we want to understand, not only do we want to interpret things, but we want to affirm the fundamental good news that runs all the way through the Bible, that runs all the way through genuine religion, that certainly runs through the life and teaching of Jesus. And this is summed up a number of places in the scriptures. One of the most frequent is the phrase, do not fear, do not be afraid, have confidence in God and God's presence in the world. Paul the Apostle summed it up by talking about faith, hope, and love. That's not a bad trilogy. If we stick to those three things in our teaching and preaching and living, we'll do just fine. Jesus, of course, extolled the virtue of love, not only the love of God, but also the love of our neighbor. We talked about the love of our neighbor last week. Bad things continue to happen. You know, this whole program was launched as a pushback against the destructive forces in our federal government. The policy of this government can be summed up like this. We're going to blow up the services that help people, and we're going to build up the prisons that confine people. Let me say that again. The new federal policy can be expressed like this. They want to blow up so many of the services that are designed to help people, not only people in the United States, like teachers and the national parks, but also people around the world who are suffering from diseases. They want to blow up these services that help people. They want to build up the prisons and concentration camps that detain people. Now, of course, the three worst things that have happened this week, every week there are things. Here are three things this week. Number one, the government announced that they're having to destroy millions of pounds of emergency food that's being stored in the Middle East for the poorest of the poor. But because the government dismantled the distribution systems, both here in the United States and in our partners abroad, they're having to destroy this food. Think about this. People in Gaza going hungry. People in poor parts of the world starving for food, and yet our government is having to blow up the food. Number two, they're voting to dismantle the Department of Education. Do you remember just a few years ago when a previous president wanted to forgive student loan debt? And the Supreme Court said, oh no, the President of the United States does not have the power to forgive debt. Oh no, but when this president and this regime wants to blow up the whole department that oversees student debt, the Supreme Court has said, okay, it's good, go do it. We don't need the Department of Education. All over the country, teachers, school districts, your school district, where your kids go to school, where you teach, is scrambling to replace the help and the direction, the funds that come from our Department of Education. It is a bad thing. But the third thing that's happened this week is that the Senate and the House voted to defund public broadcasting. That is NPR and PBS. Now, I am a lifelong fan of both of these, NPR and PBS. I've listened to them faithfully, watched them faithfully. As a matter of fact, the best daily news broadcast you can get is the PBS Evening News. It's an hour long. They do in-depth coverage. And what's going to happen now that these people in the federal government want to blow up public broadcasting, we're going to have to fund it. I'm going to write a check. I encourage you to write a check to your local PBS or NPR station and support them. Keep them on the air. Listen to them. Promote it. It's good stuff. And it's a terrible thing what's happened this week. So what have you done to keep your sanity this week? What have you done to maintain your equilibrium? You know, over the last couple of weeks, I've encouraged everybody to go to your local farmer's market. We went yesterday and bought corn and squash and blackberries, all kinds of stuff at our local market, and honey. Go to your local festival. There are festivals almost every weekend within driving distance of where you are. Go to a concert. You know, I was going to take my grandson to a concert this week. He loves the music of Les Mis, and it has played this week in Durham, North Carolina, and I was going to take him until I looked up the prices of those tickets. The cheapest ticket at the back of the balcony, $301. And the best seats down in what they call the orchestra section, $1,100 per seat. I had to write him and tell him I couldn't do that. Later this week, he wrote me, actually he sent me a video. This is Sam, who was with me the last 2 weeks here in the house. He sent me an audio video that said, "Popo, you know how you're always wanting to buy me the book I want and take me the place I want to go and introduce me to the people I want to meet. You know how you always do that. I found where I want to go. I want to go to the midget wrestling competition. It only costs $30, he said." And I thought, oh my, what have I done? What kid have I raised? But at least something I can afford. But Les Mis is coming to Greenville next January, and we've all resolved to save our money, and so he can finally go to that play. I want to tell you really 3 good things that have happened to me to keep me sane and happy. I hope you can make a list today of the good things that have happened to you and share them with the people around you. Focus on them. First of all, my brother, who's lived all of his adult life in Illinois, bought a house in the mountains of North Carolina, just a little over an hour's drive from where I live. And I went up there to meet him for the inspection. We had a great time. He's moving here. It's a big move for him. And I look forward to having my brother David, some of you know him, close by. Second, between where I am and where he bought his house is Hendersonville, North Carolina, and this Friday they dedicated the new Akusta Trail. Now, the Akusta Trail is one of those Rails to Trails events that have become a great boon to physical and emotional health in the United States. All over the country, governments and individuals have taken these old abandoned railroad tracks, beds, and turned them into walking, biking, running, hiking trails. We've got one that runs right down through the middle of Greenville and Travelers Rest where I live. It's called the Swamp Rabbit Trail. It's the best thing that's happened to our county in years. It's an economic generator. It is an opportunity to meet and spend time with people as you walk and talk. It's a great place to exercise. I hope you have a trail where you are, and I'm going to go up there to the Akusta Trail as soon as I can and walk those first 6 miles of that trail, which I think is supposed to be maybe close to 19 miles before it's finished. And then this personal word that's happened this week, I finally got started creating the manuscript of another book of essays. Some of you know, because you've bought it and read it, that a number of years ago I published a book, Mercer Press, I think it's 2008, maybe 2006, 120 essays that I wrote on the Meeting House platform. Many of these were published in local newspapers. As a matter of fact, I got an inquiry this week from a woman in a rural part of Kentucky saying, she had read something online that I'd written, and she said, "Are you the minister that printed your articles in our local newspaper 30 years ago?" And she went on to compliment me for how much they meant to her, how they gave her a vision of authentic religion so different than what she normally encountered in her own community. That's something that I wrote 25 years ago. Well, there are 120 essays in this one. I'm sending it to you for a donation, but I've started putting together another volume of these. Since this is written, I've written 500, 600, 700 more of these 700-word essays about religion and American life, about politics, about episodes in my own life, about what I think about church and politics and books and people. This book is going to have a whole section of 10 to 12 essays on John Prine. Many of you know my John Prine affection, it's going to have a whole section on my dad. I got a call yesterday from a reporter in Western Kentucky who's doing a story on the last legal public hanging in America, 1937, Owensboro, Kentucky. I wrote an article about it a couple of years ago because my father, at the age of 14, was one of the 20,000 people who attended that public hanging, the last legal public hanging in America. Anyway, I'm going to put that story in the new book along with others about my dad, Tom Moody, who died in 2013. Now I want to play a video, and we'll come back and do our red letter lesson about one of the most important and consequential texts in all the Bible. If you have a Bible, get it out. I want you to open up your Bible, Mark chapter 13, what we call the prophetic sermon of Jesus, or it's also in Matthew 24. Pull out your Bible. I'm going to give you an outline. I'm going to talk about how this is impacting American foreign policy today. I'll be back in just a minute. We've been looking at the life of Jesus with the lens of politics. And what I've tried to show you is that there are political markers all the way through the gospel accounts of the life of Jesus. It even begins with this statement. When Caesar Augustus sent out a decree that all the world should be enrolled or registered or taxed, that was the episode, the political episode, that forced, according to the biblical stories, Joseph and Mary, the pregnant Mary, to travel to Bethlehem where Jesus was born. That is, the story as it's told in the gospel has that political marker on it. And then, of course, at the end of Jesus' life, it was a combination of religious authority and political authority that arrested Jesus, that interrogated him, that whipped him, and finally executed him. That these were political acts. We looked at the text where Jesus gave his first public address after John the Baptist was arrested for preaching things that disturbed the political leaders. They arrested him and then executed him. That's what triggered the beginning of Jesus' ministry. We looked at that event. Throughout Jesus' life, he was combating the political empire of the Caesars with the spiritual empire of Jesus Christ, the Lord Jesus Christ, we call him now. And through it all, Jesus kept saying, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He's given me a message of release to the captives, a good news to the poor, and victory over the things that bind us." And so we come today to this famous passage, sometimes called the political or the prophetic discourse of Jesus. This is where Jesus and his disciples are going into the temple, the Herodian temple. I've been there many times. They make comments about how big and beautiful it is. Boy, aren't these steps great? Isn't this gateway wonderful? Isn't this Temple Mount expansive and strong? And doesn't it make you feel good? Doesn't it make you feel the power of God and the power of Caesar? But Jesus said this: it's all going to be destroyed. God's judgment is coming upon the Jewish people and upon Jerusalem. It's all going to be torn down. And this sermon begins with his disciples asking the question, when is this going to happen? Are there signs that we can look for? It is this sermon which has given rise to this endless fascination with the signs of the times. Can we know when something is going to happen? Can we know when the end of the age is going to happen? And that is part of this distortion of the Christian gospel, which is so fascinated with the end of the world. Now, you know, I was just in St. Louis. We've been showing some videos about this. I was there with my son and grandson. We had a wonderful time. But also in St. Louis, while we were there, were 100,000 people attending a religious convention of the Seventh-day Adventist. The Seventh-day Adventists are good people. Some of them are very near and dear to me. This movement was started about, soon to be 200 years ago, with the conviction that Jesus was going to come back in the 1840s. They are called Adventists because they emphasize the soon advent of Jesus. This has been a preoccupation, not just with the Adventist. It's been a preoccupation with some Christians since the time of Jesus. When is Jesus going to come? Now, time and time and time again, people have made decisions about life and work and money and poverty and everything based upon the conviction that Jesus is about to come back to the earth. And it has always been a mistake. It's genuine in its intent. It's honest in its motivation. But it's a misreading of the gospel. Jesus was talking about the judgment of God on Jerusalem because the Jewish people rejected the prophets that God sent to them, including Jesus. But people have turned this into a fascination about the end of the world and the battle of what is called Armageddon, right there at Har Megiddo in northern Israel. Har is the Hebrew word for Mount Megiddo. You can go there when you visit Israel. This preoccupation with the end of the world is always a mistake. Jesus was focused on how to live right now in our time. He was not focused on when the end of the world is coming. So the first part of his sermon describes things that happen here and now. I'm going to read part of it to you here in Mark chapter 13. Let me get my glasses, because this old Bible is little print. Take heed, many will deceive you. Many will come in my name and saying, I am the Christ. Many are going to come and say, now is the time of the Advent. God is sending Jesus back. Many people are going to say this. Deceive many. When you hear of this, of wars and rumors of wars, don't worry about it. These things have to be. The end is not yet. How many times have you heard somebody say, oh, the wars, the rumors of wars, the earthquakes and famines and all this, these are signs of the end of the age. This is not true. These are signs of life on planet Earth. This is the way it always has been. It's the way it always will be. It's just signs of how nature operates. And Jesus is warning us not to get swept away by some fanciful anticipation of the end of the age simply because there's another famine somewhere, or there's an earthquake here, or a forest fire ravages our own community. These are not signs of the end. They are signs of things all the time, everywhere, for everybody. That's part 2 of this sermon. Nation rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, the earthquakes in different places, famines and troubles. Some people would want you to think this is the end. But Jesus plainly says, this is the beginning. Right there. Verse 8. These are the beginnings. It's not the end. It's the very opposite from what people would have us believe. It's not a sign of the end of anything. It's a sign it can be the sign of the beginning of judgment on Jerusalem, and that's the next part. Because the whole focus of this message is on judgment on Jerusalem. And I want to pause on this because many people say, whoa, you can't speak a word against Israel. That's what's going on right now in American foreign policy. You can't speak a word against Israel. Not only will you be called anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, you'll be called racist if you call for God's judgment on Israel because of the way they're treating the Palestinians and the way they're bombing Gaza. The American ambassador to Jerusalem and Israel right now is a Baptist preacher from Arkansas. He's all gripped up in this confidence that, we can't criticize Israel. We can't push back against Israel. This whole sermon that we're looking at this week and next week is Jesus' criticism of Jerusalem, Jesus' criticism of Israel, Jesus' condemnation, and his prediction that because of their behavior, God's going to crush Jerusalem, destroy the temple, and overturn every one of those 60-ton rocks that form the foundation of that Jerusalem. It's the very opposite from what our foreign policy in Israel would have us to believe. We need to hold Israel accountable. God judges Israel just like God judges every nation. There needs to be humility in Jerusalem. There needs to be mercy from the Jews to the Palestinians. There needs to be justice in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Israel. This is the gospel of Jesus Christ for today. Have I said enough? Well, we're not funded by public media and the federal government, so they're not going to be able to take money away from us. And I'm going to stay with my voice, reading and interpreting the scriptures and preaching the message of Jesus for you today to walk, live humbly, simply, truly, with the great mystery of the universe, the Spirit of God. To live merciful to everybody you meet, from the high and the low, and the rich and the poor, the healthy and the weak, the struggling and the successful. God is preparing you to meet somebody this week who needs your mercy, your understanding, your help, your strength. And goodness knows the whole world needs the justice of God. We want to be part of the movement of justice in the world. For the whole world, not just for us and our types, but especially for the immigrants in our community who are being abused today. God bless you. Thank you for joining us in the house today. I am Dwight Moody. Let me hear from you. I'm interested in what you think and where you are, what you need, what you want to say, what you want me to address. I hope you have a wonderful week. Help me to spread the word of Sunday in the House. You can share this on your Facebook page. You can recommend it to a friend. You can record it and send it to somebody who needs it today. Maybe you have needed it today. Maybe something that I've said today has touched your life in a positive way. Give thanks to God. Do what is right. Be strong. the Spirit of God dwells in you today. I'm Dwight Moody, and this has been Sunday in the House.